So I'm here this morning with Simone Davis, who's the Director of Adult Services at Signal Centre, and we met at the end of March, I guess it was, wasn't it? Like almost a month ago, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And yeah, I got to see some of what Simone and her team get up to, but we also ended up having some really interesting conversations that I was keen to capture on this platform. So Simone, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Signal.
Of course. Well, this is my pleasure because I absolutely love what I do. So I am the director of an adult day program here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we are a program that is a part of a larger agency, which is Signal Centers Incorporated. So we're one of the 11 programs of Signal Centers. Um, so it's kind of a big window of what Signal Centers actually does, but ultimately all of our services are aimed towards those with developmental intellectual disabilities and really encouraging that independence, empowering that decision making and encouraging that lifetime self-sufficiency for our friends. So again, a large umbrella. But I like to focus on what I like to call Club SC. That's what we like to call ourselves down here, just because it's a lot more fun for sure, and it's easier to say Club SC is the place to be. But we are an adult day program. We like to think we are a lively and enriching adult day program, but mainly we're a place where adults of all ages and all abilities can come together. We get to focus on their independence. We get to focus on social engagement. They get to be with their peers, a place where they feel comfortable, where they feel safe, but also having that extra benefit of providing additional support and respite to the caregivers that we provide services for. So here in our program, we are arts and recreations based. So we have an activity calendar, but our guys get to tell us what they want to do. We don't tell them. So we focus on what we can do and what we can control and how we can fill each day with purpose and with meaningful experiences. So we use the person-centered philosophy for that. So our activity coordinator is looking at the different personalities that are in the room, the different abilities that are in the room, the different preferences, and looking at, okay, how can we come together? How can we stay engaged throughout the day, but being productive as well? So being able, again, to be flexible enough to encourage that participant choice, but also being structured enough to where we can encourage that routine, as well as facilitating those meaningful connections all day. And that allows that caregiver to be able to know that, hey, my loved one is they're not only somewhere that's safe and that cares for them, but they are somewhere creating memories and they are somewhere using their skills while I work or while I go run errands or while I just go and take a nap. Because really that's what most caregivers need sometimes is just allowance to say, hey, I got it for now. Why don't you go take a nap? So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. And I remember when I was there with you and we went into this lovely, beautiful big room that was kind of a safe space or a resting space. It was like the lighting was just kind of muted, and there was some really comfortable places to be, a bit like a sensory room or a yeah, just a rest room. But there was also some different cushions with like different expressions of emotion on, and we got talking about um the kind of post-COVID experience where some of the participants began to come back, and you as a team began to facilitate those conversations around the things that they'd been through, and the losses that they'd been experiencing. And that's a real area of interest for us at Unique Connections, because we do a little bit of bereavement work with organisations, particularly with non-speaking, to how we support somebody who has little or no verbal communication, if they're bereaved. And yeah, I was really interested in some of the work that you guys have been doing around that. Could you tell
yeah,
us a bit about it?
yes. So you have described our sensory room, or what we like to call the experience. Just to add, again, we obviously love fun names around here, but yeah. So our sensory room wasn't around until after the pandemic, and like you said, that was because of the levels of grief and change that we witnessed, and really just a fear of, oh no, what has happened and how do we help that? Because the pandemic kind of stopped everything we're about. We are literally about bringing people together, being close, all the things we could not do throughout the pandemic. So with that, we saw so many different levels of grief. We saw the grief of them losing their program and not necessarily understanding. We serve all different types of abilities, and some of them have a cognitive level that may be a little higher than others, but not everyone understood exactly what was going on and why I can't go to a place that I've gone to day in and day out, or maybe I only go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but still that's what my Monday, Wednesday, Friday is consumed of. And now you're telling me not only I can't go there, but I also don't get to see my friends. Maybe I'm also not seeing my family. Maybe I'm not leaving the house at all. All those things that you become so comforted by and used to, you have that safety and security of that routine, all of that had gone away. And again, just not having that understanding of why, and oftentimes not being able to express that. And, I think we did a decent job of coming together relatively quickly and pivoting to virtual programming in that time, but still it wasn't the same. So now we're grieving the fact that, okay, now we're trying to have this virtual programming, but it's not the same. We can all acknowledge that. Not everyone could join us. We were quickly aware of all the accessibility issues that we were running into, people not having access to internet, even if they did have a computer at home. And even if they do have a computer and internet, do they have someone there with them to help them navigate Zoom? So when we started trying to teach our participants as well as their caregivers this Zoom thing, a lot of caregivers were still working, so they weren't able to help with it. So it was really different. And then when we came back together, we were closed for 8 months, just about. So when we finally came back together, there was still this uncertainty and grief because, okay, we're back together, but we're all wearing masks. I can't hug my friends. You got these plexiglass things going on. What's that about? People who already had difficulty communicating their wants and needs. Now it seemed a little, all that was heightened. All that anxiety was heightened. Again, it's not the same at all. So we created the sensory space. It was actually the idea of our activity coordinator at the time. It was something she had studied in school. And what she didn't know is that our brains were here. She's thinking, oh, I like this sensory room thing. And I'm thinking, what might help if we had a way where people could separate themselves from the group, where they could go into a room that maybe it's not as bright, it's not as loud, there's not as many people. We can separate ourselves. Maybe we can add in ways where they can communicate with us. So we added a communication board where if you can't verbally let us know what's going on, maybe there's a picture or a word that you can point to that might let us know what's going on. So of course, as soon as she had that idea, it was like, okay, magic, let's make it happen. And now we have seen that it does seem to be helping, because even if I don't know what I'm feeling, if I don't know what I need or how staff can help me, I can go into that room, I can self-soothe, I can find something that keeps me stimulated, whether that's light. We tried to have things in there that's going to stimulate all your senses. So hearing, sight, smell. We didn't do taste because we didn't want people putting things in their mouth. But there's fidget items in there that fidget with and kind of self-soothe through that. But then staff are able to say, okay, now that we've calmed, talk maybe, let's take a deep breath. Can you tell me what's going on? Can you show me what's going on? Can you point to what might help me? And again, it's not a fix-all, of course, but it's a start. It's a start. We've seen some positive improvement. Some of our guys just like to go in there and take a nap after lunch and just kind of relax and just have some place of solace. So it's very comforting, even for staff. We try to stay out of there. Otherwise, we might take a nap in the middle of the day.
And I think that regulation piece is really important for a lot of people with intellectual disabilities. But I think moving from, okay, you've had an opportunity to regulate, but now let's have the conversation that we need to have. about what and why, how you're feeling. That's the bit that I think sometimes gets missed in the, we use a sensory room maybe to help somebody regulate, but then we don't do the follow-up that, well, now that your brain has come back online because you're no longer in a fight, flight, freeze mentality, let's use that moment of regulation to have the conversation that you need to have. And I know you were talking to me about a conversation you were having repeatedly with one of the participants about her own experiences of grief, and I just found this like fascinating. So can you tell us about it?
Oh, yes. So, so we have a young lady that's in our program, and trying to think of the best place to start this. So, she is someone, we serve all abilities and all ages, and she is someone who hasn't had a disability her entire life. There was an event that happened in her life shortly after she finished her degree, actually, in graphic design, that caused a traumatic brain injury. And so, of course, that left long-term effects on her memory, on her executive functioning. And she had lost her mother at a fairly young age, but she was fortunate enough to have her father still in the picture. And then there was a stepmother that came along. She lived independently with assistance, but her father was extremely active in her life. They saw each other all the time. Even here at Club Essie, he was always here for every party or just to stop by and say hello. She was definitely a daddy's girl. And then when her stepmother passed away, well, it was her and her father against the world. Okay, so very, very, very close relationship here, and we've experienced some grief together. But while she started to grieve the loss of her stepmother, she started to develop a fear of the day that she loses her father. So I started working in the day program the summer of 2018. And at that point, she had already been known to be someone who, she comes in distraught a lot of the times, or maybe she comes in and she's in a great mood and she's looking forward to the day, but then her mood shifts. So she was coming 3 days a week. And then a lot of times too, there might be a trigger. So Motown music was a trigger for her because she loved to listen to Motown with her stepmother and with her father. So if Motown was playing, it might be a happy thing. It might be, oh, my dad loves this song, and she'd get up and dance. But it might trigger, oh, now I'm upset. And staff kind of caught on fairly quickly that it might have something to do with her dad. So in that time, of course, we're acknowledging that, okay, we're upset. Do you want to talk? Or do you want to just stay with the group? Most of the time, she's going to choose to talk to a staff member. But it always started with, well, this is it. My dad's going to die. He's going to die today. Okay. So that kind of started a routine conversation of, okay, so I'm hearing you say that your dad's not okay. What's going on? I hear you saying he's going to die today. What's going on with that? And then she could go into, well, I'm sure he's fine, but I just know that today is his last day on earth. Okay. Well, have you seen your dad recently? Well, yeah, I saw him yesterday. Okay. Well, how was he doing? Well, he's great. He's doing all right. Okay. Well, what is he doing today? Oh, well, he's probably out on the golf course. Well, yeah, your dad loves to golf, doesn't he? And then she might tell a story about how he let her drive the golf cart while they were out on the courses, and just trying to get her mind to a different place. And then we'd say, okay, well, your dad the best, so would he be golfing if he didn't feel well? Is that typical of him? And that's when she would say, well, no, probably not. He probably wouldn't do that. And then we could ask, okay, well, do you want to give him a call? At that, and that was typically a point where she could say, well, you know what, he's probably fine. I can go back and be with everyone else now. But she might choose, okay, yes, let me call my dad. And so she'd call him, and he'd be able to reassure her that, oh, I'm alive and well, I'm doing all right. And she could talk to him for a little bit. And then she'd be able to go back in with the group. Sometimes she just needed that reassurance and that moment to know that he's okay. But then unfortunately, around the beginning of 2021, she did lose her father. Wow. And of course, we weren't sure what to expect. Her family had shown up to pick her up from the center here. Wow. And said, we'll keep you guys updated, let you know what goes on. And, we let her go, and they were the ones that broke the news to her on that. So we didn't know what to expect. We did definitely expect for her to take some time off to grieve,
Yeah.
especially a few days here and there. No rush coming back whatsoever. But she returned shortly, maybe a few days after burying her father. I want to say it was a day or two, not the next day, maybe 2 days after the funeral, that she was back at the center, and it shocked all of us. But it was one of those things where, again, we didn't know what to expect, but this is not what we expected. But we also don't need to, make a huge deal about it, because it's okay. People grieve in different ways.
Yeah.
And with her, we don't know how her traumatic brain injury might affect that. We
Yeah.
don't know, it seems that for years she's been grieving her father.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like every other week we remember, oh, our father's going to pass away, or, oh, my father's fine. So she's been going in these cycles. We don't know what to expect. And
Yeah.
now she doesn't talk about him often. Or when she does, it can be very lighthearted. It can be, again, a Motown song. Oh, my dad loved this song. And if she does, she might become saddened for just a
Yeah.
moment. She might drop a tear, but
Yeah.
it's nowhere near the level of where we were when our greatest fear was that our dad's going to pass away. Nowhere near. It's like now we're comforted and we're at peace by knowing, all right, dad's gone, and that's okay.
Wow, I just love this story, and I love it for a number of reasons. Firstly, the acknowledgement that because she'd already had grief in her life, she was very frightened about her dad passing. And this is really like ordinary, isn't it? This is an ordinary response that if we've had people in our lives who, very close family members who have died, our minds start to be concerned about those that are left and when we will lose them, and that you rather than trying to like jolly her up or distract her, or like think, well, we'll just try and help her not to think about that you would intentionally go with that conversation and get her to reason it out, and do that reality checking that is so important when our minds are spiraling into anxiety. So getting her to think about, well, where is dad, and how well might he be if he's golfing, those sorts of reality checking moments, and then also giving her the opportunity to say, well, you could ring him, and then at least in this moment we know how he's doing. And I think that it's really easy to miss these, like, simple but really important therapeutic processes, how we help somebody through anxiety. And and I've seen that it can be really tempting to go the other way and not to engage in the grief or the fear, but instead to, particularly with somebody with intellectual disabilities, where that there's going to be a different process. You can think, like, if I engage, they'll spiral further, or I'll encourage them into those mindsets. But actually, you engaged over and over and over again with her and helped her to process the anxiety she was in. But she obviously also did a good deal of grieving prior to her dad's death, and grieved and processed the loss that was coming. And I think also the fact that she would say, like, my dad's going to die today, and you wouldn't say, no, he isn't, because you didn't know it either, right? Like, we're not in control of these things. So actually being able to validate and legitimate that fear and say, well, let's sit with it and let's think about it, think about the risks. And then I think, that this then led her to a place where him passing was something that she had thought about so much and so repeatedly in a contained way with your support, that meant that it was tolerable when it happened, because she'd almost done we said, like, something like she'd done it back to front, hadn't she? She'd done all the grieving before he passed, and then she was able to move into acceptance at a much greater pace than most of us would be able to. And I think the dignity of allowing somebody to go on their journey in that way, and facilitating that, it's just a really beautiful example of of facilitating someone's process in the way that they need it. And I know I also got to asking you, and I wanted to ask you again on here, like, I've had so many conversations since we met as well about the fact that we are often asking people to come and give direct support. You run a team of direct support professionals, um, who um, who maybe when they come in are not fully aware of the complexity of the interactional work that they're doing. That maybe they think, well, I'm going to go and do some artwork, I'm going to go on trips. But actually, what they're being invited into are these quite complex emotional and relational interactions with people. And I know that you had some particular things that you would talk to about, staff members, even at interview, and then the way that you also helped them to stay focused on the work that they're doing. And I know this is such a big concern across the whole sector in the UK and the US. Like, how do we equip our support staff to do, emotionally intelligent work and support that's actually going to make the difference that we're looking for? So can you speak to that a little bit, Simone?
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. You come into it and you see the outside of it. You see the fun part. We do have a lot of fun
Yeah.
around here. We do take trips, and we play bingo, and we play cards, and we do a lot of art, and those are the shiny things that sell the program. But I guess knowing, for us, it's very important for our people coming in to see the whole picture of what the job is going to entail. And as a direct support professional, it's important to realize that, trauma, death, any type of unfortunate events, like with what I explained with the young lady before, it comes with the job.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it makes it any easier at all. It's not something that you get used to, but it's something just to be aware of, because it is something you're going to have to experience yourself as well as help others through.
Yeah.
So just acknowledging that, we do encounter that grief in many different ways, and not much is going to be able to prepare you for that, and especially not preparing you for the day where you lose a participant or a caregiver that you have spent years nurturing a bond with. Nothing's ever going to prepare you for that. And so I try to be extremely transparent about that up front, that is a part of the role. And we have also developed this community of people who care deeply for one another, so it's not one of those things. A lot of times in this field, people will say, oh, well, you're dealing with people with memory loss. They won't remember that friend. But around here, we like to say people may not remember your name or exactly where they know you from or what you do, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And our friends don't forget anyone.
No.
Once you are in their life, you are here. We like to say they love everyone always, and they forget no one ever. And no matter how hard we try, we can't shield them from the realities of the world. These are things you're going to encounter not only here, but also in life. It's a part of life. And I think it's important to be transparent with caregivers and participants about the things that just come with life. And we also know that our friends can take a rumor and they can run with it. So for us, it's important that, when things like this happen, if someone has passed away, if something unfortunate has taken place, it's important that before rumors start, that either we're getting the truth from a caregiver. If it's most appropriate for the caregiver to do that, then that's totally fine. But we would rather it be the caregiver or a member of our team to give them that information before we start to come to conclusions on our own. And for our team, it's important that we have the opportunity to grieve amongst ourselves. Typically, of course, because I'm the director, I'm the one who's going to get that news first. And sometimes I just need to sit with that for a minute. Once I feel that I'm able to share that with the team, then we do that separately from our participants, letting our team know this has happened. And we will be talking about this in the coming days. But right now, I just need you to take this information in for yourself. Do whatever it is you need to do for yourself. because here soon we're going to start this grieving process with our participants. But first, we need to take that time for ourselves before we can, because this is a connection that you've lost as well, and that also gives us time to speak with the family,
Yeah.
especially when someone passed away. We want to make sure it's okay that we share this news.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't think I've ever been told no, don't share that news with anyone.
Mm.
Um, so we want to make sure that it's okay. We want to make sure that we have the answers we can get. A lot of times they want to know, well, are they going to have services? Can I go? Can I send a card? Can I send flowers?
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that that's information that we have before we're letting them know. But
Mm.
then also it kind of starts that clock, because if we know there are services that these people are going to want to attend for their friends, we
Yeah.
need to make sure they have time to coordinate that. And then, of course, as I said a moment ago, sometimes it's best for a caregiver to share that news,
Yeah.
especially if we know that there's two participants who have been especially close and one of them has passed away. Well, we might want to call the caregiver of the other one and just say, hey, we wanted to be sure that you were aware that this has happened,
Yeah.
because your loved one has suffered an incredible loss, that we're going to need to share with them, so that
Yeah.
way the caregiver can decide, is this something I want to share here? Is this something that, I need the staff's help in sharing? But kind of gives them that room to make that decision. And then, of course, once it's time to share the news, we find it important to do as a group at the
Yeah.
beginning of the day. And that way, one, we're not putting anyone on a bus to go home with feelings that maybe they haven't had time to process. A bus driver who doesn't know what is going on, and now we've put someone on a bus and we've just told them that their best friend passed away.
Yeah.
That's never something that we want to do. So we do it in the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
We like to kind of start off, because we do like to focus on the positive so much and have, such an upbeat morning, that it's important to kind of start off with, hey guys, I've got some tough news to share.
Mm.
We all might want to sit down and just kind of talk about it for a minute. And that's typically where the whys or what happened start to come out. And as well, let's all take a deep breath, and we need to sit down. Let's talk through this. Some
Yeah.
people can't sit down, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But that way they're kind of given that room to say, okay, I can sense the tone is a little different this morning. Maybe I do want to have a seat, or maybe I want to get closer to a staff member that makes me feel comforted. But then we're able to break that news and share what we can share. No, yeah, they're going to ask, well, why did they die? What happened? And that's not a question that we answer directly, but we can indirectly say, well, I'm not quite sure what happened. But what
Mm.
I do know is that these things do happen, and that we don't always have the answers to these things. But
Yeah.
what can we focus on, and what can we pour our energy into? Are there memories that we can think of that loved one? And that's typically where it comes out that, oh, well, can we make a card? We recently had someone who passed away who, had a wife and children and grandchildren. Oh, well, can we write a card for them? Can we give them a call? Can we make them a video? So just kind of talking through all the ways that we can kind of grieve together, and then it kind of gives us time to say, all right, well, let's switch gears, let's get started for the day, not really ignoring what has happened and moving on,
Yeah.
but all right, now let's start to move on with our day. But also, as those complex emotions are coming up, I want you to know that the staff are around and we can help. If you need to talk, please let us know.
Yeah.
Letting our caregivers know if you need resources. No, we don't provide those counseling services. But we know some people that can help, and we can help you get
Yeah.
connected to those. So a lot of times just letting them know that we're here and we're all working through this together, and that we can be helpful is enough. But it's never easy. It comes with a job, but it's never easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you're describing is just a healthy grief process, like that we talk about it together, and we tell the stories of the person, and then we think about how can we reach out to family. Like these are really sort of classic healthy rituals. But I think because we've been through these very tumultuous grieving seasons, I think a lot of them have got lost in service provision. So, even as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking these are healthy grieving processes. I just don't hear them very much in service provisions, particularly with people with IDD. It tends to be, and I think that very careful process that you watch over, Simone, of like, I'm gonna like gather myself and make sure I'm regulated with the news, and then I'm going to talk to my team and I'm going to give them time to make sure that they can pull themselves together. And then when we've done a little bit of that processing work and we're feeling okay, we'll start to share it and work it out with our friends and participants. And I think that careful, steady journey of processing a grief, I think it's really important, but it so often gets missed, and instead the grief kind of gets caught in everybody and nobody quite knows what to do with it. And then there isn't the containing space for the participants to actually go on their own journey, because the staff don't know what to do with their grief, and so there just isn't any space. And I think, that careful process that you talk about is so important to hear in this context, and the space you give both to your staff and to the participants.
Yeah, and we try to focus really on another thing we do with our incoming staff members that I didn't mention is really focusing in on the why behind everything. And a lot of times that's enough to kind of pull us back in. Knowing that personally, I find it important for an employee in any role to have buy-in to the role itself, not just the job necessarily and everything that comes with the job, but the role that you're playing in the lives of other people. Being connected to that mission and that vision behind the role. And once you can do that, that's where you find that motivation to get through those challenging times. Fortunately, we're a part of an agency that is extremely intentional about connecting everything that we do back to our agency vision and our core values. And so when we do that, it's like, okay, well, I guess in other words, you can say there's a why behind everything that we do, as a program and as an agency. And so to look at what that looks like, a few years ago, I found this statement. It's by an unknown source, but I found it online, and it's titled "My Why." And I printed it out. I actually always have a copy with me on my desk. It's kind of lengthy, so I won't read it, but I do keep a copy, and I like to share it with my staff, especially those incoming team members, because it grounds me and really reminds me of, the fact that I am a part of something that's much bigger than myself. And it reminds me of how the simplest of tasks can make a world of difference for the individuals that we serve. And so then another thing that we do during our regular check-ins is I ask my team, when you come into work each morning, what do you look forward to? Good way to kind of get the conversation going, but it also helps me check in on that why, because what are you looking forward to, or what's on your mind when you're driving to work? And what I found is that it's never been the pay, and it's never been to see my coworkers, or because I'm really excited about lunch or what I got going on this weekend. It might be that, but ultimately, a lot of my team members, well, I'll say all of my team members, fortunately, are united in their response. What they look forward to when they're driving to work is seeing our participants. It is the warm welcomes they're going to get when they come in the door, and the cheers because you are their superhero. It's, knowing, oh, is my friend Katie going to be able to join a group activity today, even though I know that's not her norm, but is today going to be the day that she does it? Looking towards the silly things that we do to put a smile on somebody's face. Those are the things that they're looking forward to. It's the people, it's the experiences, it's the impact that we're making. It's why. And once we can kind of ground ourselves with that, then we have something to always go back to.
I love that, because, like, we're all of us in the human services sector, aren't we? Because relationships matter, because people matter to us. But it's so easy to forget that, and to get, caught in the difficulties and the struggles, and to feel, and then to again end up in a default mentality where we just feel like we're getting through. Well, my goal is to get through the day, get through the day without, with as little trouble as possible. And once you're in that mindset, the the sort of the atmosphere and the culture of what you're doing starts to deteriorate. But yeah, I love that, like very intentionally starting each day with like, what am I actually doing here? Like what's the purpose for me behind the work that I do? And when we can keep a hold of that routinely, then we also can keep a hold of the fact that actually, the goal of what you do at Signal is to help those participants to find their why, to find their um, reason and purpose in their day. And so the whole thing spirals up rather than spiraling down. So I really love that check-in, that like daily check-in. Why are you here? Why did you come to work? Why do you do this job? And yeah, just as a way of recalibrating the whole the whole culture really. And I know that I've had a lot of debates over the years, particularly with um, caregiving staff, about this tension around being a professional and professional boundaries. And I wanted to ask you about that because you hear it from every end of the perspective. But you definitely sometimes when if we as an organization would talk about relationship connection, finding the connection, all of those kinds of things, sometimes there's a pushback where people will say, but this is my job. And I need to form a professional relationship. That means that I'm not going to make a connection or get too attached, would be the phrase that I often hear. Like what do you think of that? Because this is a big part of what you do.
It is. It is. It's extremely important because it is so easy for those lines to get crossed and for them to get blurred a bit. So I find that having that regular discussion around what those healthy boundaries are and what those professional boundaries actually look like in our field, that's just as important as talking about the different types of grief and loss that we experience through our field. Well, and here at Club SC, we think of ourselves as, trying to think of the term, the professional friends. We
No.
are professional friends, but what does that mean? Because like you said, at the end of the day, I mean, this is our job, sure, but it is possible to remain professional while you maintain that person's dignity.
Yeah.
Also building intentional bonds,
Yeah.
intentional, genuine bonds, I should
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
It is possible. We serve a vulnerable population that often lacks those boundaries themselves. So not even looking in the professional field, but just as an adult, they lack those boundaries that they're supposed to have. When we're out in public, we're over trusting, we're over caring. We don't know what a stranger is.
Yeah.
Those boundaries they often lack. So it's important to set those boundaries with them for their own good. We're trying to keep you safe, but also, yeah, to create that professional boundary as well, because it's natural for them to grow attached to us. It's just natural, and it's a part of building that relationship. They're going to ask, can I have your number? Can I be your friend on Facebook?
Right.
They're going to want to hang out with you outside of the center.
Right.
But when the staff have been prepared that, hey, these are things that are going to happen, they're going to ask you these questions.
Yeah.
And it's okay for you to say no. In
Yeah.
fact, we encourage you to say no
Yeah.
because they need to know that they can say no. They
Yeah.
need to know that, no is a complete sentence for one. But also, there are boundaries here. If I come and if I join your sleepover this weekend, then I've got to join everybody's sleepover. And that would be exhausting for me. So how about this? How about instead we plan to go on the trip together next month? Or, when it comes to Facebook, I don't really spend as much time on my own Facebook, but you know what? Signal Centers has a Facebook, and we have a Facebook group where
Yeah.
we can be together and we can post things. So what if we were friends on there?
Yeah.
So kind of showing them what is appropriate. We're not saying no,
Yeah.
but there are ways that we can be friends. But I've got to keep that professional. And again, giving staff that allowance of, don't feel obligated to say yes. You don't have to.
Yeah.
It's okay to say no, and it's okay to create those healthy boundaries, even with our caregivers. A lot of times our caregivers themselves have experienced maybe a school or program or just different things in their lives where their trust has been tainted for our field and, the people who are providing care. And that's a form of trauma that they're carrying with them. So when they get to know us and they trust us, then, oh, you got to be my go-to source for everything. And that's an honor. It truly is. It's an honor. But boy, I am not the expert on everything. I
Yeah.
wish I could be, but boy, that sounds exhausting. But it is my job to help you connect with resources that can do that. So making sure that, if they're asking, oh, can you come and sit with my loved one this weekend? Well, I can't do that because again, if I sit with you this weekend, all of my weekends would be tied up because then I'd be sitting with everyone every weekend. But you know what? I do know of some different weekend respite options in the community. Let me see if I can get with our family support specialist to help you get connected with those. Do you want to come to our caregiver support program? Because that's why we've created those things. It's important that we stress that goal of we are here to create a community where you all can develop a community amongst yourselves. We're always going to be here to listen and to support, but at the end of the day, our experiences are not the same. And I won't always be able to relate to your experiences. But you have friends here that can relate to your experiences. There are caregivers out there who can relate to your experience. I'm only a caregiver within my work hours. You're a caregiver 24/7.
Yeah.
That's something to be proud of.
Yeah.
And you deserve to have a community of others where you can go to and you can talk about how stressful that might be for
Yeah.
you. You can
Yeah.
talk about the good things that happen and the things that you might need more of. So I guess just really trying to redirect them to the appropriate place for that. A lot of times we lack those boundaries because we haven't been taught those boundaries and because people are afraid to teach us those boundaries. But
Yeah.
once we take that effort to acknowledge, hey, I love that you love us and that you want to come to us for everything. I love that. But no one can do this alone. This role it takes a village. It truly does. And it's
Yeah.
important to understand that when we make efforts to strengthen our team, strengthen our caregivers, strengthen ourselves, then we're ultimately strengthening that individual. We all have to learn how to be self-sufficient. So I feel that's the most important piece.
Do you know what you're describing is something that I feel like it's just clicked into my head in a new way as you're describing it? Because what you're describing is the behavioral boundaries that you put in place as a professional, but understanding that those behavioral and structural boundaries don't limit the level of a relational attachment that you can make with someone. And I feel like this is where the confusion comes, that for some people, they feel like, well, if I form a really strong attachment to someone, I have to be everything to them. I have to think about them all day, every day. I have to meet all of their needs. I have to come in on my day off. I have to get to know their family. But actually, we just know that this isn't true. And in fact, that's an attachment, but it's not necessarily a healthy attachment because no one person can be everything to another person. And so, we have the freedom to say, I'm going to pursue a really strong, healthy attachment with this person that it is my job to be their friend, but I can put my all into it. I don't have to put barriers up emotionally because my barriers will come in my behavior, in the parts of life that I let them into or not, and understanding that a healthy attachment includes the word no. It includes the word no, I'm not coming to see you on Saturday. No, I'm not going to be friends with you on Facebook. No, I'm not going to meet the wider needs of your whole family. Like, these are actually a modeling of a healthy attachment. And I feel like sometimes professionals hold back emotionally because they think that will protect their boundaries. But that's not where the boundary is. The boundary is in how we manage our behavior towards each other within the context of a strong attachment. So I feel like you've given me some new language for that, just as you described, the boundaries that you put in professionally, but you didn't say anything about, and I make sure I don't get too attached to anybody relationally, because that's when we've got good boundaries around our work and around our relationships, we can afford to make those attachments even though we know that it, that it may well lead to grief and it may well cost us later. But, as we know that grief is the cost of love, isn't it? That's part of the journey of relationships. So I feel like you've been really, just really helped to clarify some of those principles about how we do meaningful, relational, healthy support with those that we serve in a way that allows them to feel safe, us to feel safe, but does give them those key relationships that we all need, don't we? We all just desperately need that in our lives.
Yeah, what we're all craving. We just want to be understood. That's it. We all want to feel that we have a purpose in life. And so, I think just having, again, knowing your why behind that and being intentional in what you do to make that happen for people, I think that's the best part of the job. Yeah, the grief comes along with it. You grieve a lot of things. You get a lot of backlash from all the no's, of course.
Yeah.
Um, no, but ultimately, I've done something for the greater good. I have done good work here, and that person is going to be better because of our interaction.
Yeah. So helpful. Thank you, Simone. Thank you for
Of
sharing some of your work. That's been beautiful.